Our story begins long before Tiger Woods, before the Masters, and even before the iconic Old Course at St. Andrews. It was February 26, 1297, in Loenen aan de Vecht, a small town in the Netherlands. It was a time when golf wasn't a sport yet. The townspeople were gathered for a celebration. Among the festivities, a group of locals engaged in a game in which they were hitting a leather ball with a stick. The goal was to knock it into a target several yards away. This game in Loenen aan de Vecht is one of the earliest recorded instances of a sport resembling golf. While it's tempting to say this was the birth of golf, the truth is, people have been playing variations of stick and ball games for thousands of years, across different cultures. The Romans had paganica. In ancient China, there was chuiwan. Even the Egyptians played a similar game with a stick and ball. But if we're looking for the true birthplace of modern golf, we need to head to Scotland. By the 15th century, a game called golf was gaining popularity. Unlike the earlier versions, this game was distinctly Scottish. It was played on natural terrain, with players trying to hit a small ball into a hole in as few strokes as possible. The game was so popular that it became a bit of a problem. In fact, in 1457, King James II of Scotland banned golf because it was distracting his subjects from practicing archery, which was crucial for national defense. Despite the ban, or maybe because of it, golf continued to flourish in Scotland. By the early 16th century, golf had become ingrained in Scottish culture. Even King James IV of Scotland was known to play. As the game grew in popularity, it became clear that some order was needed. The rules of golf, much like the courses themselves, were originally informal and varied from place to place. One town might have its own set of guidelines, while another had entirely different customs. But this lack of standardization couldn't last forever. In 1744, the Honourable Company of Edinburgh Golfers decided to put some structure around the game. They drafted the first official rules of golf, 13 guidelines that laid the groundwork for the modern game. These rules included instructions on how to handle lost balls, what to do if your ball landed in a hazard, and of course how to play fair. With these rules in place, golf started to become more organized and competitive. Clubs began to form. Members would gather not just to play, but to socialize, discuss tactics, and no doubt share a few drinks as they recounted their best shots of the day. One of the most iconic golf clubs that emerged during this time was the Royal and Ancient Golf Club of St. Andrews, established in 1754. St. Andrews was, and still is, considered the home of golf. The Old Course at St. Andrews, with its rolling fairways and treacherous bunkers, became the blueprint for what a golf course should be. As golf clubs grew in number and influence, so too did the quality of the game itself. The equipment, which had started off as little more than crude wooden sticks and leather balls, began to improve. Club makers and ball makers experimented with new materials and designs, trying to create the perfect tools for this increasingly popular sport. By the late 18th century, golf balls were no longer made from feathers stuffed into leather casings. Instead, they were crafted from more durable materials that could travel further and withstand the harsh conditions of the Scottish links. The clubs, too, became more specialized, with different shapes and sizes for different types of shots. This was the beginning of the modern golf bag, filled with a variety of clubs, each with a specific purpose. As the 19th century dawned, golf began crossing borders and capturing the imaginations of people across the British Isles. The game was introduced by Scottish soldiers, merchants, and aristocrats who traveled south and brought their love of golf with them. At first, it was seen as a pastime that seemed more suited to the wild landscapes of the north than the genteel countryside of England. But as more people were introduced to the game, its appeal became undeniable. By the mid-19th century, golf clubs were springing up across England, with courses designed to mimic the challenging terrain of the Scottish links. One of the earliest and most influential was the Royal North Devon Golf Club, founded in 1864, which is often regarded as the cradle of English golf. As golf took root in England, it began to attract a new breed of players, wealthy landowners, businessmen, and members of the aristocracy, who saw the game as a perfect blend of leisure and competition. These early English golfers brought their own flair to the sport, with an emphasis on style, etiquette, and the social aspects of the game. Golf in England became a symbol of status and sophistication, and across the Irish Sea, golf was making its mark in Ireland as well. The sport arrived on the Emerald Isle in the late 19th century, quickly gaining popularity among both the Anglo-Irish elite and the local population. The Royal Curragh Golf Club, established in 1852, is often cited as one of the oldest golf clubs outside of Scotland, and it played a crucial role in spreading the game throughout Ireland. As the sun set on the 19th century, golf was no longer confined to the British Isles. The game first set sail for America in the late 1800s, carried across the Atlantic by British expatriates, wealthy industrialists, and a few enterprising Scots. who saw the potential for golf in the New World. At first, golf in America was a niche activity, played mainly by the elite in private clubs, but it didn't take long for the game to catch on. In 1888, a man named John Reed, often referred to as the father of American golf, founded the first official golf club in the United States, the St. Andrews Golf Club in Yonkers, New York. What started as a small group of enthusiasts quickly grew into a national movement, with golf courses popping up across the country. As America embraced golf, the sport began to take on a character all its own. American courses were often grander and more ambitious than their British counterparts. By the early 20th century, iconic courses like Pinehurst No. 2 and Pebble Beach had been established. The United States Golf Association was founded in 1894 to oversee the game's growth and ensure that the rules were standardized across the country. With the USGA's support, golf flourished in America, leading to the creation of prestigious tournaments like the US Open, which quickly became one of the sport's most coveted titles. But golf's journey didn't stop at the shores of the Atlantic. As the 20th century progressed, the game spread to new continents, carried by British colonists, traders, and adventurers who introduced it to far-flung corners of the globe. In Australia, golf took root in the late 19th century, with courses springing up in cities like Melbourne and Sydney. The Australians, with their love for the outdoors and competitive spirit, embraced the game wholeheartedly, producing champions like Peter Thomson, who would go on to win the British Open 5 times. In Japan, golf was introduced in the early 20th century by British expatriates. Despite the country's limited space and challenging terrain, Japan's golfers found ways to adapt, creating courses that were both beautiful and challenging. South Africa, too, became a hub for golf, thanks to its British colonial heritage. The game was introduced in the late 19th century, and by the mid-20th century, South African golfers like Gary Player were dominating the sport. Player, known as one of the greatest golfers of all time, brought global attention to the game in South Africa. As the world emerged from the chaos of World War I, the 1920s ushered in what would come to be known as the Golden Age of golf. This was a period when the sport truly came into its own, with an explosion of interest, talent, and innovation that would shape the future of the game forever. Golf courses, tournaments, and legendary players all converged to create an era of unmatched brilliance and excitement. The United States in particular became the epicenter of this golfing boom, with courses springing up across the country at a dizzying pace. Architects like Alistair Mackenzie, Donald Ross, and A.W. Tillinghast were at the forefront of this movement, designing courses that were not only beautiful but also challenging. This era wasn't just about the courses, though, it was about the players who walked their fairways. Names like Bobby Jones, Walter Hagen, and Gene Sarazen became synonymous with golf. Bobby Jones, in particular, was a phenomenon, a player whose skill and sportsmanship transcended the game itself. In 1930, Jones achieved something that no golfer had ever done before by winning all 4 major championships in a single calendar year, completing what is known as the Grand Slam. At the same time, the British Open and the US Open were becoming the pinnacles of golfing achievement. The Ryder Cup, first contested in 1927, added another layer of excitement, pitting the best golfers from the United States against their counterparts from Great Britain and Ireland. The Ryder Cup quickly became one of the most fiercely contested events in golf. The golden age of golf was also a time of technological advancement. Equipment manufacturers were constantly experimenting with new materials and designs, which resulted in the development of clubs and balls that could achieve greater distance and accuracy. But perhaps the most significant change during this period was the way golf was perceived by the public. The sport was no longer just a leisurely pursuit for the wealthy. It had become a cultural phenomenon, a symbol of elegance, precision, and excellence. Golf courses became social hubs, places where people gathered not just to play but to connect, relax, and enjoy the beauty of the outdoors. As the golden age of golf came to a close, the world was once again plunged into conflict with the outbreak of World War II. And then the mid-20th century marked the beginning of the modern era of golf, a period defined by the rise of television, the globalization of the sport, and the emergence of new superstars who would take golf to heights previously unimaginable. One of the most significant developments of this era was the advent of televised golf. The first live broadcast of a golf tournament took place in 1953, and it didn't take long for the sport to captivate television audiences around the world. For the first time, people could watch the best golfers in the world compete from the comfort of their own homes. At the heart of this new era were the players themselves. These were icons who would become household names and redefine what it meant to be a professional golfer. Arnold Palmer, with his swashbuckling style and magnetic personality, became the face of golf in the 1960s. His battles with Jack Nicklaus, a young prodigy with a powerful swing and an unshakable focus, captivated fans and set the stage for one of the greatest rivalries in sports history. Nicklaus, known as the Golden Bear, would go on to become the most successful golfer of all time. with a record 18 major championships that still stands to this day. The modern era also saw significant advances in golf technology. The introduction of metal woods, graphite shafts, and high-performance golf balls revolutionized the game. And then Tiger Woods burst onto the scene in the late 1990s. In the 2000s, he truly cemented his status as one of the greatest golfers of all time. Woods' impact on golf was profound, not just because of his success on the course, but also because of the way he changed the game's image. He made golf cooler, more exciting, and more accessible to people from all backgrounds. At the same time, the equipment used by players continued to evolve, with clubs and balls that were more sophisticated and precise than ever before. Golfers now had access to data and analytics that allowed them to fine-tune their swings and strategies to a degree that was unimaginable in previous decades. This technological revolution even filtered down to amateur golfers as well. As the world became more connected, new markets like Asia and the Middle East emerged as major players in the golfing world, with countries like China, Japan, and South Korea producing a new generation of talented golfers. The growth of the game in these regions was fueled by a combination of government investment, corporate sponsorship, and a growing middle class that embraced golf as a symbol of success and modernity. Off the course, golf continued to evolve as well. The sport became more inclusive, with efforts to increase diversity and make golf accessible to everyone, regardless of background or socioeconomic status. Initiatives like the First Tee and Women's Golf Day helped to introduce the game to new audiences, and there's no doubt that the game will continue to evolve, inspire, and unite people across the globe.